Okay, welcome. We are going to get started here. Again, welcome everybody. We have a great topic today. Um, Before I begin, welcome to Center for Business Analytics, Big Data University Speaker Series event. These are held monthly, if not twice a month, depending on the season. We did not do one in December, for example, due to holidays and things. But our discussion today is on AI and content creation. So whether it's video or text or sound or marketing materials, design. Um, Kind of the sky's the limit today on that topic around AI and content creation. As I've learned from my students, I know a lot of students are on TikTok and other places and very active with content creation there. So I know some students here are really into that. So the way this is going to go is we're going to have Riley Rude, who is going to work with a series of questions. And the first couple of questions will be geared towards individual panelists, and then there'll be a group-based process where all the questions are going to be asked of each of the panelists there as a group. So today we have Sebastian Fuhr, Director of Content Engineering and Operations at Mayo Clinic, Jose Pelez, graphic and web designer and owner of Pelez Creative, LLC, and we have Dr. John Ebert, Program Director, Data Intelligence and Geographic Analysis and Cybersecurity, and a whole lot more. I do apologize. Michael Todd was not able to attend today. I'm confident we will get him to participate in a future event. He's got a lot to offer there from the finance industry. So my apologies if you were here specifically for the financial industry on that aspect. Okay. So Riley, let's get the show on the road.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this gloomy Monday. So I'm just going to start with asking all our panelists each individual questions, and then after those questions, we'll follow with some open-ended questions for all three of our panelists. So my first question is going to go out to Sebastian. So Sebastian, how is AI currently being integrated into content management within healthcare? And what challenges have you encountered in this process?
Thanks so much, Riley. It's a great question and very timely. Mayo Clinic is working really hard to try and figure out how to navigate this space of, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And there's a lot of answers to that. I'll try and be really succinct. So I'm the Director of Content Engineering and Operations at Mayo Clinic. That's kind of a mouthful, but for this audience, in terms of business intelligence, right, I sit on the business side, but I have a background in software engineering, about 20 years with IBM prior to my 5 years at Mayo Clinic, and really focused on the content supply chain end to end of how we sort of build our content, manage our content, and deliver that content. There's a lot of existing channels that consume our content. Those are web. We deliver content to print. We deliver into an electronic health record, where the patient record is sort of really locked down. So we deal with personal health information, or PHI. In healthcare, it's a little bit different kinds of content, very different than TikTok, but we do have marketing content, right? And content out on YouTube. So there's content all over the place. Content's a pretty broad definition. For us, primarily, we have content for patients, so patient education materials. Those could be printed out. We have, if you go out to mayoclinic.org, you can look up our condition guides. If you're suffering from a specific medical condition, you'll find out not only what that condition is according to kind of the nature of it, but what Mayo Clinic thinks about it. And then we do have content that goes out to syndicated partners, content that goes to our practice physicians. So to try and answer that question, the first thing that we really leaned into with AI are policies and usage rights. So when you log into Amazon Prime today, if you have a Prime account, right, your subscription is there with all the videos that you can stream, but you have to rent some other videos that may be new and pay for those. Digital usage rights for multimedia has been around for a long period of time. We're trying to apply those same kinds of usage rights to our content, the written content, our multimedia as well. And we're really being cautious about how we apply those usage rights to the access of different large language models and how we consume them internally, what can be internal versus external. So there's a lot of metadata application that goes into that. Our content is stamped with a lot of enriched metadata, lots of values about, who is this content for, and also who can use this content. The policies themselves are really focused in on who within internally can use this content, and what kind of, if we hand this off to an IT engineering team that might pull it into a Google Vertex or a search database and then pull it into an LLM, we're trying to track where all of these different kinds of content are going and showing up. So initially the challenge is, how do we get the right content to this new consumer, which is large language models primarily, that are typically layered over with retrieval augmented generation or RAG capabilities, right, to get updates. The second piece of that is really creating closed units of content is our own content versus external content, and then figure out which are trusted, credible types of content to pull in there, right? There's a lot of content out there. When we want to build these LLMs that we're building at Mayo Clinic, specifically for our authors to draft content using it, we need to make sure we can point to where the content comes from. We need APIs in place to make sure we can also get the latest and greatest content back in and enrich it. One of the challenges I think that's been solved in the last year with RAG is the ability to get updates into expensive LLMs that you've built and then refresh that content. It's critical. If we make an update, you can imagine in healthcare, if something changes, if there's a safety issue or something like that, we have to have the latest and greatest. The last piece is that I'll just kind of talk about is, we're not really doing much. There's a difference, and we can talk about it maybe later when we talk about where AI is going. There's really a difference in generative AI and agentic AI, and you'll hear this kind of terminology, I think, a lot in 2025 if you're not already hearing it. But agentic AI can sort of has agency, can take action on its own, whereas generative, we're sort of studying the data and getting what we get, and then people are searching and retrieving information from it. Most of what we're doing right now is the generative space. And the way that we're using it is really quite cool. Human beings will always draft the final content at Mayo Clinic. It has to be credible. It has to have supporting evidence associated with it. Our brand is a trusted, credible brand. I say always, in the near term, I don't think we'll have AIs really writing content by themselves. What they can do, though, is really help search for reusable content, search and find and pull back content that can be drafted by authors, and essentially enrich and speed up their experiences in terms of content creation. So I'll kind of pause, or I'll stop there, I think, and pass it back to you, Riley, so you can kind of move the conversation forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Sebastian, for that insightful response. So moving forward, I'm going to have a question for John. So how has the adoption of generative AI impacted the way fake content is created and distributed across various platforms?
Yeah, that's another great question, Riley. Thank you for that. And Sebastian had another, or prior ed, discussed a lot of really important things as well. So we'll kind of be piggybacking off of what Sebastian was saying as well on this. So the lens for which I'll be bringing content into the discussion will be primarily from a security side, but also kind of a little bit of a data analytics and big data perspective on what's all happening between it. They all kind of slinky together in different ways. And so when we're looking at AI from a security platform, that's a difficult thing to get ahead of. And I really enjoy the title that Michael has on his PowerPoint there, and the Big Data University. That's really what it is. The amount of data that's out there is growing and growing, and there's historic data that's trying to find all the vessels of metadata inside of that. And so when we look at a security standpoint from the concept of deep fakes or fake content, more data that's being created is or can potentially be fake. And so it's really hard to get a handle on what that is. And from folks who are in small businesses and whatnot, they're the largest attacked group out there in terms of cyber scams. And some of that is unknowingly falling victim to different scams that may involve deep fakes. So deep fakes, I mean, could be a number of different things. It could be anything from fraudulent audio, fraudulent video, things that we would typically take at face value as being truthful. And in fact, it's either malicious through threat actors or what have you in some bad way. And so we're seeing from a cyber standpoint that deep fakes or fake content is really impacting through phishing attacks. And they're trying to find passwords and whether or not people are using that with social engineering that really sort of ascribes to the generating that persuasive narrative or dialogues that mentally are kind of exploiting that human psychology of being real and that we can trust it and welcome it, if you will, when in fact it's really just us divulging sensitive information that opens up the world to a lot of, or the company or what have you, opens it up to a number of different potentials for scams and loss or exploitation in some manner. But this was kind of a little bit interesting sidebar to sort of, I have to say, not sure on the, I have to validate it 100%. So we're talking about deep fakes, but there was a group at a university, I think, that was using an app that had facial recognition on that. So folks who have mobile apps, that you're running with different biometrics, this is kind of a little bit scary when you say, my voice is my password. You can gain access to different accounts or different facial features for the biologic recognition, software to gain access to accounts and whatnot. So the voice is a little bit worrisome. Facial features, probably not too far away from having different ways to circumvent that. But there's a group that developed an app that they could literally walk around and find somebody on the street and take a picture. And through facial recognition, would scour multimedia, social media primarily. And you can literally find out who that person is, where they work, contact information, who their parents were, for example, where they live, phone numbers, and all that, and use it as a way of really, I can kind of call it social engineering to buy acceptance, like authors, like, oh, you're that famous author, weren't you, that wrote something up on this? Oh yeah, I am, and they didn't even know that right away. They just use that facial recognition to data mine, really. So again, whether or not that's 100% all truth, I'd have to do a little more digging. It just caught my mind here as we were talking about this. But yeah, I mean, social engineering, the deep fakes, the biologics, some of those automation, the deep fakes are automating bad data more than ever. And so the way that through attack campaigns and malware and things like that is a little bit troublesome. Alternatively, on the positive side, a lot of the data that's being created, likewise within AI, again, a little bit more on the security side from a landscape of businesses and whatnot. You can have business data that AI is able to recognize what is a potential threat, what isn't ultimately. So as much as there's bad data out there, there's also good data and the ability to track some of that. It's a little insight on the security or kind of the big data side.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John. I really appreciated that response. I'm curious to see where AI is going to take feeding out the bad data from the positive, or the good and the bad. Moving on to the next question I have for Jose. So as a content creator or a designer who works with companies, how has generative AI influenced your creative process, especially in terms of web design and content creation?
Content creation, cool. I thought people first need to know. So I'm a self-employed graphic designer in Winona, Minnesota. Okay, and so when it comes to AI, you do have to know that I really, really love AI, and I hate it just as much. Okay, I go both ways here. So as a graphic designer, I myself don't use AI for designing. I don't even use it for brainstorming. Okay, so that's kind of the fun part of my job. Okay, so I'm not really ready to give that up. Um, so I just try not to use it for the creative, uh, you know, part of the process. Uh, I'm thinking, right now how it feels like I rely a lot on a calculator sometimes to give me to do some basic, solve some basic problems. I'm afraid that that's gonna happen uh, to my creative process, where I'm gonna just rely on AI to design these things for me and come up with ideas for me. So I don't want that, or I don't want that to happen just yet anyway. Okay. I do every once in a while. I do try, the different AI models to generate ideas just to see what they can come up with. And even though they look really cool, they feel very generic. So to me, it's just like a faster way to find clip art, let's say. So at this point, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really work for me or what I do. So I would say not really influencing my creative process yet. But then when it comes to content creation, more like photo editing, super helpful. I mean, I can get a lot of stuff done now because I can automate things, and so yeah, really really helpful. And especially since you mentioned the web design, web design and content creation. Of course, I don't have AI help me with the design or the layout of a website, but I do use it a lot to come up with the content. This is something that I didn't really like to do before. Like content for the About Us page, or now have to come up something for a write up for all the different services that the client provides. That I do use, just Chat GPT for that, and it's really cool. It's really cool. My clients are all small businesses. They just need something, even something generic to get that website going. So that helps me a lot. That's a part of my job that I didn't like. It was very time consuming. I can just have AI help with that, and that allows me to now have more time to take in more clients, so I can do what I like most, designing. So I have more time for designing, where before something would take me 10 hours because of me trying to come up with wording for a website. Well, I'll cut that time in half. I can now take in two clients. And so definitely, so see, like I like it and I don't. And the reason I don't like it um, is because now every time that I see an image, like a digital created image, I just remember before thinking, oh, that's really cool. I want to know who designed it, or how talented this person is, you know? I wish how much that I don't get that anymore. Every time I see an image out there, it's like, okay, probably AI generated, and that's what I think about everything that I see now. So I don't like that. Otherwise, yeah, like I say, it hasn't really influenced my creative process other than allowing me more time for designing, because now I can automate and have it write text for me, and have it edit photos and things like that. That's kind of my answer.
Awesome, thank you. That's a perfect segue into this open-ended question for all three of you. So how do you guys think AI tools can sometimes create designs that feel generic? So how do people balance creativity and the need for personalized, distinctive content when using AI in projects?
I think Jose, I'll go really quick and kind of comment. I think your feelings are the feelings of all of us in the industry, as this sort of moves so quickly, right? So every day, whether it's a co-pilot summary that you can go back to, the data is at your fingertips, so you can move and do sort of some of these menial tasks that aren't as fun, searching for an asset that already has been created that I could reuse. These sorts of search, find, the data helps with that. The AI is really good at that. I think at Mayo Clinic, we have just incredible graphic designers, with decades of skill under their belt. They're creating medical illustrations that have to be exact with callouts and labels. They're in InDesign, they're in Photoshop, right? They're in building these beautiful graphics. We have photographers, videographers that are creating professionally created assets. They can use, they want to go out and do the video shoot. They can use AI to help put together, for example, the transcripts for us. We need to publish those transcripts and we get transcripts back, and it can speed the process up. But again, you have that human touch at the end. So I think the balance between, this generic feeling is putting the spirit of a human being, their art, their creativity, always sort of at the finished product, to ensure that it meets the level of quality you want. I can go create, I use GPT to create fun images for, employees, friends, whatever, joking around. We all know that those are AI generated because I create them in a few seconds. They don't look very good. It's getting better. But there are huge limitations with it. I'll say really quickly, there are certain parts of generative AI and large language models that are limited by the data too, which is very interesting. If you try to ask an AI, you get the 10-10 conundrum. So if you ask an AI, a generative AI, to generate an image of a wristwatch and set that wristwatch to noon or any other setting, it will always set it to 10-10, because all of the images, that is the aesthetically pleasing setting of a wristwatch that images all throughout the internet have used everywhere. So all of the data going in overwrites that LLM's ability to create it. And no matter how much you tell it, it can't figure it out. Sometimes it'll jump and try and create an ASCII creation of it rather than a DALL-E version. But it's really limited. Same thing, most individuals, it's biased. Most individuals that are presenting something online are using their right hand. If you ask it to put that wristwatch on the left hand, it'll always put it on the right hand. It can't figure it out. So there's bias, there's limitations. A human being has to kind of watch for those things, be aware as they're working with the AI, and then put that true, finishing touch on it. And hopefully the AI helps foster some pieces of that are more of the menial labor parts.
Yes, that's for sure. Very, very generic. At least the results that I'm seeing whenever I try to use it. So for sure, eventually I'll use it more just for efficiency. Just have it come up with a bunch of initial ideas. Maybe I'll use it to help brainstorm, but then at the end. You do need that, like I said, that human, like a human touch, your human touch. And I think if like me, if you're creating something very original, well, if you're original, then what you create is probably not in the AI database, so it won't be able to create something like that, not at the beginning anyway. But yeah, for sure, it's just the human touch at the end. That's what will set the two apart at this moment anyway.
I guess one thing I could throw in on top of that, although it's been alluded to already, some great commentary here, is AI. It actually can be used as a great, Sebastian talked a little bit about this, a great way to generate ideas. You're messing around with an AI, whatever it is, a number of different applications of that. And so you could put in something, whatever that something is. It could just be, for purely creative idea generation and output something you would never expected. And so the outputs of that oftentimes lead to more idea generation. So that there's an element of creativity that I find personally where it's doing visualizations or not so much simulating cyber attacks, but it can be, but there's just different ways of using AI from just purely, okay, give me something factual, to give me something that is off the wall, ridiculous, kind of fun. And let me see if that gives me some ideas that I can use to put in something creative, and then obviously augment that through feedback loops and other control mechanisms with people to really personalize that, or highlight something different.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, I have GPT on here, and I use the spoken one, and I talk to it all the time. If on Sunday I'm doing reading, I might be reading something difficult or complex. I might not know a word. I want to know about more sources. I use it. It's like a little Jiminy Cricket, right? That's sitting with you, that you can go back and forth with and ideate, to your point, right? And so I think in the same thing in Mayo, we've really seen in professional business application, the draftsmanship piece early on, that's where it really comes into play. So it can help you to ideate, like you said, and it can help you personally and professionally sort of think through, summarize, speed a few things up, and come up with clever ideas, because you have the entirety of most of the world's data at your fingertips, depending on the corpus you're calling. That's easier with public versus sort of private LLMs, and that you've built that may be more limited and targeted to usage. But in both cases, it's a great insight.
Awesome. All right, so that's perfect to move into this next question. So what are the main risks associated with relying on AI for content creation, and how can companies in specific mitigate those risks?
I'll go and just reiterate what I said before, and then others can talk about other areas. I mean, I think the risks are that it hallucinates, it gets things wrong, it gets things incorrect. So I think we know that that's the case. So in a lot of our AI usage policies that others have written, in my area, health education and content services, there's some leaders that are really doing great work in this, are ensuring that we already have a discipline. So our content creators are already working with supporting evidence. They're meeting with doctors and physicians who are the foremost experts in this subject, and they're reviewing their supporting evidence, et cetera. The same real focus in whether it comes from AI or comes from a human, you can have incorrect data and information, right? So I think it's so much data, and it's so easy to just sort of take it for what it says and then throw it in there. And you just have to be really judicious. I think I talked about the policies. There's also metadata around your content. So really, the more that you can enrich in a sort of professional capacity with high level quality content, you can enrich that content with that metadata. That can help. Highly structured content can help too. You can sort of control the shape of the content that you want going to the LLM, and sort of influence how it's consumed. So I think that would be, there's a lot of risk of inaccuracy. I'll just say, I would encourage everybody out there to go try Google's Notebook LM if you haven't tried it. So if you have a Google account, you can log in. I think it's a revolutionary AI that is just incredible. So you sort of have 3 panels in there. You can put any data sources you want. It will immediately ingest those live, and then you can talk in the middle in a traditional AI format back and forth with it. On the right, you have a panel that will generate an FAQ for you, generate study notes, and at the top, you have an action to create an audio podcast with 2 AI agents that talk back and forth to each other. And it's astonishing. The vocalization, the text to speech that it creates, it takes about 2 minutes to generate. And you have a full podcast based on all the data points that you put in there of a female and a male voice speaking to one another. And a lot of their information that they say is completely wrong. Right. So it's a 17-minute podcast. And if you were to just upload that, you could be disseminating incorrect information. Most of it is highly accurate, and most of what they're doing is spot on. But again, it's the due diligence of there is always risk of something being incorrect.
I can talk in my industry. I mean, so yeah, same thing. I mean, the risk will be, putting out work that it looks very generic, inaccurate, and then also maybe like illegal. Like, you don't know, depending on what models you are using. They could be pulling information like copyrighted material from different sources. And what if it creates something that is like too close to the original work, and you don't know that, So that wouldn't be good if you are designing professionally. Uh, so to help with that, of course, you need the human oversight, someone looking at the work and making sure that it's not stealing, graphics from other places. And that's why, like when I design, if I'm doing anything that has to do with images, then I'll use something like Adobe Firefly. When I know for sure that Adobe Firefly just uses images from Adobe Stock Photos, so I know that it will be fine. I will be okay. I'll be okay if I use those for commercial use, for when I'm doing work for my clients. So that for sure. And then, I mean, that's the only way that I can think of. Like, if you don't want to worry about, it being legal or not, it's just knowing what software you're using, I guess. Otherwise, yeah, just I think I keep coming back with the generic thing. I mean, for my industry, because I've seen a lot of work created and generated by AI, and it all really looks the same. And so I don't know. Like, for me, that's the risk. Number one, people, more designers, if they start using these and just putting out work that is come from, generated by AI, and then that's what they put out there, everything's gonna look the same. There's not gonna be no originality. That's kind of the risk. Everything will look generic and a lot of time inaccurate.
Yeah, I guess just to piggyback on that, essentially what's been discussed already has been, what I see in industry for me as well. And maybe one thing that's of sheer interest to me personally is bias injection into, from a standpoint of risk, that is, bias injection into LLMs or the language models and types of data that are really biased going in to train. It's all deception again, perhaps. And or it's either deception or people didn't know what they were doing. So there's kind of two different ways of thought on that. And another one just to throw out there, another maybe perhaps couple is in educational realms, we see or hear this often that, gosh, we're becoming too dependent on technology, to do the work for us, summarize articles, whatever that might be. And so we're kind of at that stage of saying, okay, well, how do we use technology to reinforce good educational practices? So whether it's a dependence on technology for some or a way that we can help enhance learning, that's one thing that we're always looking at in terms of educational structure, strategies, and whatnot. And probably one of the last one that just comes to mind is, and I expect this will change in time with personalization, and there's some tools out there that are useful for this, but it's pretty easy to see, or for those of us who are kind of trained in a little bit, what is AI is something AI generated. So in other words, you receive kind of automated messages or whatnot. We know, or we have a belief that, okay, it's maybe a little bit more on the AI generation. So translation, if that is being used a lot, it can impact reputation, I think, a little bit too, of saying, okay, here's a risk that this company or organization or whatever it is, that there's an overuse, maybe they're not personalizing it enough, which translates to the consumer saying, okay, or to those of us who have some experience with that, what other risks are being thrown into the hopper here if they're becoming so accustomed to using this, but not personalizing it, maybe working with some poor data. So it could be a little bit of reputation management or whatnot, or risk on that end of things too.
That's super insightful. I just want to add to that I think brand identity is everything, right? For a company specifically. So as you're working with a company and you want to, if the brand is trust, that like they're then in a difficult and challenging position. How do we use these AI agents to go faster? All companies are going to want to go faster, right? And they want to adopt the latest technology. This is a tectonic movement. You sort of have to get on board with it, but absolutely protecting your brand identity. And if things come out that are mistaken, or to your point, if you see the genericness that Jose is talking about, or you see even words like I'm sure you've read an article as you're scrolling through your news feed. It's like, oh, well, that was AI generated. Like a human didn't write that. So back to that beginning of that human. That's why I think that human touch is so critical. Now, where these AIs will go, having listened to these generated podcasts on Notebook LM, is astonishing. So it may get more and more difficult to differentiate between what is human and what is AI. But right now, you definitely can see it.
Perfect. To go off that wonderful, insightful comment, looking at the future, how do you see AI-driven content creation evolving in the next 5 years? What new tools or techniques do you think will become standard in each of your industries?
Okay, I think I'll go first. So of course, I mean, in 5 years, oh man, in 5 years, I better start looking for another job. Let me see. I mean, it'll be more personalized. We'll be more adaptive. We'll be able to help you kind of like in real time do pretty much whatever you need. Right now we have tools. As a graphic designer, we have tools. We have tools for creating illustrations, for photo editing, for designing websites. But you're still, kind of like a person needs to know how to use all these tools and control them and create. But I mean, right now, for example, like we have, before 10 years ago, maybe less, a client needed a website, they'll come to me, okay, it needs someone to create it for them. Then right now people can create their own website. You have software platforms like Wix or Squarespace, super easy to use, but still a small learning curve. Some people don't like that, so they still have to hire someone like me to use Wix to create their website. Now, I mean, pretty recently, now is now you have AI powered, Wix websites where you don't have to do anything but tell it pretty much what you need, and then it'll create it for you. So that that was kind of my job before. So so the client pool gets smaller and smaller, depending on or the size of your agency or the clients that you're working with. Um, so I just know that in 5 years, I'm assuming I'll come to work and I'll just tell my AI what projects we're working on today, and I'll just do everything for me, I guess. Uh, so it wouldn't be as fun, but I'll have to get used to it because I think that's where we're going. That's what it's going to be. Yeah, it'll be fun. So it'll be kind of sad for the probably the current generation of designers that really, really enjoy doing that. But in the future, new designers, I mean, that's just how it will be. And then everything will be fine. That's what I think.
I'll go next, and John, jump in anytime. I love that, Jose. I think, they're really, there's no way to predict what this future is going to look like because it's moving so quickly, right? And so that was not this weekend, but the weekend before, we all woke up and NVIDIA stocks plummeted and DeepSeek came out, and OpenAI. We talked about, is it legal or not? I mean, OpenAI now this week is sort of admitting everything they built was pretty much illegal anyway. It's just that now that this Chinese corporation is sort of taking all of these data feeds based on OpenAI's data feed, OpenAI is like, we kind of got this wrong. We should really be truly open. We need to emphasize the open in OpenAI and do that. So it just rapid, kind of almost insane, levels of progress. And like you can think of a bell curve kind of going up, and the sort of evolution of this seems to be almost at a vertical. So it's really hard to predict. But for sure, the AI agents, the multimodal agentic sort of AI agent stuff is coming. I actually turned the video capability off on this because it was too creepy. Like I like the audio, but like having it see me all the time and like, be able to see what's around me, it's just a little bit weird. The audio isn't perfect either. Like I really like to watch birds. I like different kinds of birds, and like I'll hear a bird song and ask the AI, can you tell me what bird that is? No. Can you sing a song? No. And I think it's so, like, for me, it's so fascinating because we moved into this space so quickly. We worry about the hallucinations that the AI has because we want to lock it down and get some specific output of it. But hallucination is just creativity, right? We're already typical human approach to things. We're already constraining the creativity of this creation that hasn't even been realized yet. I think as we unconstrain some of those things, try to govern and balance the dangers of AI, it will evolve to be a partner with us. And that's the hopeful thing, is that it creates more jobs, different kinds of jobs, new jobs, right? Turn of the century, or earlier, right? It was something like 30% of American citizens were into farming. You're at like 3%. You can look at the amount of horses that would were populating everything. They were our transportation vehicle that was primary. Now we still have horses. We're just betting on them in races, or they're there for equestrian riding. So the landscape will shift. How it impacts jobs will be important to try to understand, and especially when you get back to content creation. I still think, depending on the type of content, and that's video, others, there will be something more sacred about the content that humans truly create versus the AI assisting us, but the lines will get blurred.
Yeah, I think those are great. And Jose did a nice job of leading that off there. And I guess in the industries where I'm working with data and security and whatnot, aside from even healthcare and arts, that we're kind of talked about already, I mean, those are obvious going to be game changers moving forward in that. But I'm looking at a little bit more so on the data side, it's a little more automation, but it's also taking advantage of data that is available. New data, better data, faster data. And from really on a business side of thing, the ideal is that we're rewarding, or those businesses are rewarding the consumer. So that might be supply chain that might end up being able to predict areas of different type of growth for products. And so how's that balancing from product to consumer, closing that gap? In other words, making the consumer experience better, and in turn for the business, maximizing profitability, and so from that side. So it's predictive analytics. I see storming ahead as well. On the security side, type similar things. Using the advancement of AI, it's again difficult to know, but it's a cat and mouse game really, from threat actors to people actually that are doing good things with the technology from a security standpoint. So right now, I would say security is on the side of the good, where the threat actors are still a little more remedial as a whole, but are growing with technology too. So that technology enables us to get out in front of potential threats a little bit more easily. And again, the kind of we talked about earlier, the main area I worry about a little bit is in the small business side, just because of really the money or the resources to deal with that. They may not have the resources to build a huge security infrastructure. with a small business. And so I guess my advice moving forward on the security side is on a personal level, is be careful what you put out there. Right now people are posting stuff, their media, social media. Another one that I'd be really nervous about is genetic information. I personally would be very nervous about that. Not necessarily right now, but what's coming down the line. So keep in mind, folks, what you're putting out there on media, on the web, again, especially genetic stuff. I'd be cautious about that.
Yeah, I think those are great insights. I think the cleanliness of data may improve. What will be critical is how it gets pushed back out into an open, location where others can benefit from it. So I know, part of the benefits of RAG is you can sort of do an experiment where you pull data from all over the internet and try and do a simple experiment. Let's identify who the leaders are for Microsoft, who's the CEO, who's someone else, and you can get a grid of those people. And most of it will be wrong. The LLM will get a lot of it wrong. You can then use RAG to sort of adjust and input corrections into it until you get it right. Then your corpus of data becomes really cleansed and ready for use internally. What's not happening is that pushing back out into the places where that incorrect data was before. So it'll be really interesting to see how those how data standards, sort of big data standards, sort of improve overall, and what kind of checks and balances are out there. And I wanted to say that the last thing, I was driving 2 days ago maybe, and on Minnesota Public Radio, an executive who didn't have enough time to go to therapy created an AI replica of himself, essentially a clone, an AI clone, and then sent that to his therapist, and then would listen in on the phone. And it was really kind of just fascinating to think about that. So are we going to, the usefulness, that like the way that we use this is going to be it's going to constantly surprise us.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all three of you, for letting us pick your brains. I'm going to now leave it to the attendees to ask any questions. Just put it in the Q&A chat. And while we wait for some questions to flow in, if there is any, that conversation we had sparked a question for me, for the three of you. What role should regulations or guidelines play in governing AI-generated content?
I can start off with maybe a light grade version of a response. And so there's multiple ways of looking at that. And some of this comes down to really ethics with oneself and the deontological, or your work, your place of work, and what is acceptable use, I guess, for different types of things that are being created. I mean, ultimately that's kind of where it starts. I mean, we all have personal ethics and where we need to be on that. But if it's assuming that your question there, Riley, is related to your work, you'll be developing policies that adhere to that organization's values, mission and goals and objectives that act to reinforce that. So I hope that's a clean little intro there, and others can hop in on that.
Perfect. That answered most of my question. We have a question from the audience. One of them is, how would you guide a student specifically with the use of AI?
I'll go really fast. I would say I would guide them to go out and play. So again, I mentioned Google's Notebook LM. Make sure that you're brushing up on your prompt engineering, which is a fancy way to say how does your brain heuristically ask questions and seek answers. I think I get excited about the value benefit of us just openly asking questions at Mayo Clinic, as we rolled out these drafting capabilities with a large group of really, really smart health information writers. They're asking every question in the book and checking, how is this accurate? How should I approach this? What's the best way? And they're actually sharing ways that they ask questions that their peers are, that's enhancing the way that their peers think about information and ask questions. And so if anything, it's valuable to ask questions about the world and about the space that you're in. So use those tools, play creatively with them, generate images, read about the latest technology. Most of there's a free level of access. You don't have to pay for it. The question may be more about like, and I guess I would also just second that with also be cautious in terms of how you use it. And don't trust it. I'm sure others have some insights too.
Yeah, I would say just try all the different AI tools available, everything that you can find. Because I know my kids, I have little kids. I mean, they're trying everything they can find. Like writing songs and creating animations, and they're just like, like 9 years old, like 10 years old, and then I don't even know how they find all these tools online, but they're creating some really cool stuff. So if you're in college right now, yeah, make sure you keep up because these little kids are coming for your jobs.
And Jose, and do it while you're young before you become sort of grumpy and old. Like I have my daughter is a sophomore at St. Olaf and already become like a Marxist cat, like socialist Luddite who's against all technology and won't even answer the phone when I call her. So never know what direction. You can go either direction. You either want to use it or you can just say, I'm done. I'm going, no technology at all. It's up to you. Might depend on your discipline.
Yeah, all right.
We have one final question. I think John was touching on this, I believe, but correct me if I'm wrong. Someone asked, can you expand on the concern with genealogy and AI?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. So this is a little bit more on the security side of things. And so it comes down to just because we or one can put their personal information out there doesn't mean that it's a great idea. I'm looking to what's coming down the road. And some of it, of course, is, it's good. You think, wow, okay, hospitals have my information. And if we had that, we cured disease and stuff like that too. Those are the positives. I think the drawbacks are if we take a case study. Now, I haven't brushed up on this lately here, but just going to try to dig into my memory banks here. But 23andMe, they're a big genetics company. They got hacked, and a lot of their information, or most of it, stolen. And anyway, a lot of this went out onto the dark web, and there were different groups, actors, whatever, buying different profiles of people who uploaded their genetic information. Again, it sounds great. You found out who you're related to. I'm personally not a big fan of it. I think it opens up too many potential negatives for what threat actors can do with that information. On the security line, there's been some rumblings some time ago when that happened about we'll call it the bad people out there that could potentially use genetic information for biologic and different types of biologics, controlling the impacts genetic sequences in different ways. So with 23andMe, I haven't checked on this lately, but I know a number of insurance companies were looking to buy that data. So that's information that is rate adjustments to individuals predisposed to certain things. And I'm a firm believer in retaining as many, look, if it's digital, if about you on a computer, you can turn your computer down and walk away, but you can't walk away from who you are. That's my personal advice. And I think there's far too many risks out there for the reward on it. I can speed going 80 miles an hour home for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months, but eventually I'll probably get stopped. And so I'm just a fan of limiting genetic information. That's my own personal thing. Other people might find that it's helpful. I just don't think it's worth the risk.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything to add on? All right. Well, thank you three so much for letting us pick your brains and giving us some insightful new thoughts. Thank you all of our attendees to join us over this noon hour. I think we're going to close it out so that we can get on with our day. There will be a about 2 minute survey once we end this call. If you could fill that out, that would be really appreciated just to get some general feedback for some future events. So thank you everyone for joining.